Cops have had enough of your shit!
This isn't stained by someone in Minneapolis. It's still got a shine on it. And so do theirs. So do theirs. Stop treating us like animals and thugs, and start treating us with some respect. That's what we're here today to say. We've been left out of the conversation. We've been vilified. Our legislators abandoned us. The press is vilifying us.
And if you're not going to treat us like heroes, then we're gonna quit! He has a plan, she has a plan, and you get to pay for it regardless.
The best way to get someone motivated is to stand for something strongly, deeply, passionately.
Subscribe to Disenthrall. Do as you're told.
All right. Woo. Greetings, thin blue lines. Welcome back to Disenthrall. I will be Patrick Smith, and as you can see, today we have special guest, the Larken Rose. Welcome to the show, Larken.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
So, I don't want to get into it yet. I want to pimp all this cool stuff that we're doing. We have been doing, you especially have been doing so much really cool work. I want to make sure that we lead with it for those I can't imagine that don't know about it yet. You are running therosechannel.com, which I think I have pulled up here. If you want to briefly, if I can find my mouse, if you want to briefly tell us about like what you're doing here with this project.
Yeah, we're it's a new thing, and we're constantly in the process of throwing new stuff there. It's a membership thing. It includes the Candles in the Dark seminar, the entire 2-day seminar. You can also get that at attendcandles.com by itself, but this includes that whole thing. It includes the archives of a gazillion daily rants I've done. It also includes a number, I forget what the number is at this point, but a number of videos that I've made and Amanda and I have made just for the subscribers. And we're doing, we're going to be doing that. Sort of the goal is for it to be the place of where you can find like anything we've ever done or written or videos and everything in the world, including the seminar. And of course, can't not mention the audiobook of The Most Dangerous Superstition that some devious criminal extremist kook recorded for me and did an outstanding job.
And I'm super happy to hear that it's doing well on Audible. Like people are buying it. That's amazing. Makes me feel amazing. It's just, it was such an honor and like I'd say this every time. Like I was just on my soapbox in my audio booth, and it was a blast. Would definitely recommend that audiobook.
Yeah.
And then I would like to pimp the thing that I've been working on that is now live and available to the world, which is the peacefulparentinguniversity.com. It's a big part of what I want to do to help the world, to help parents become more principled, more peaceful parents, to create free markets in their own homes. And so I've created a series of courses that we're constantly expanding. I think there's 10 or 15 already up now. If you're a parent and want to learn how to apply principles in your parenting and expel communism from your home, go check out peacefulparentinguniversity.com. Okay, enough of the pimp.
Definitely do that so I don't have to unindoctrinate your kids later on.
Exactly. I'll be the front line, and you can clean up the mess that I miss. My goodness. Okay. The last thing I want to do is thank. And I'm going to hide us for a second. I want to thank our viewers. This is the first stream that we've had since we completed this project. What you're seeing on the screen right now is a massive render that took 90 days of render time. And thanks to viewers basically donating time on their computers, we completed it in only a month. It's an amazing background, definitely the coolest thing that I've ever designed, and I really just want to thank the viewers of Disenthrall for helping out and making this awesome background like a reality. So thank you guys, I appreciate it. Okay, all the clerical stuff out of the way. So I'm sitting here watching the news every morning like I usually do, unfortunately, and I see Glenn Beck talking about how, well, the police are just going to quit. They're just not going to put up with this, and we're seeing stories come out of, was it Minnesota? I forgot the state, where they're resigning. They're not showing up to work. Like 1 out of 10 precincts are fully staffed in this area or something like that. And so, Beck is saying this is going to lead to chaos. And I wanted to, and I could think of no one else that I'd rather have that conversation with than you, because I can see a way that this could play out. And I think I'm going to try and devil's advocate, or at least argue for that in our conversation, and we can see where it goes. But if the cops just evaporate, and this is not me saying that they shouldn't, this is just devil's advocate to see where it goes. Then it's not like we have free market competition already set up and ready to sort of step in to help people, to meet the demand for safety and security that people obviously have. And so when the cops start catching the blue flu, as they're calling it, which is them, I guess, throwing a tantrum and going home because they're not being hero worshipped like they like, then chaos comes, and then the chaos basically turns into a demand for safety. And the only way the people are going to demand a great leader to sort of swoop in and thump the Antifa guys on the head and sort of take back control and empower and protect the police and bolster the police, and then we end up with less freedom than we've ever had. What are your thoughts? Where do you think this is going?
I think that's what the control freaks are trying to spin this into and hoping for, and I think they're going to be sorely disappointed in the vast majority of cases. It reminds me a little bit of when people say, if we didn't have a military, some other foreign power would take us over because we have no organized anything. And actually, there are a bunch of organized militias, but let's pretend they don't exist. And I say, an armed population, even if it didn't plan at all ahead of time, is still way better than any standing army. And I think people forced to grow up very quickly and forced to realize, we have to protect ourselves. Like, there's no 911, there's no badge-wearing fascists to save us. Will go into the mode of grow up now because your life may depend on it. And it's a similar thing that happens when there's, a flood or a hurricane or something. A few people still just wait around for the authorities to save the day. But most people suddenly go, well, we just have to do something. Like, we'll go help people and go, take supplies, or help people, escape their house that's floating off into the Atlantic or whatever. And so being forced to grow up, while it's often ugly and stupid and brings out the worst in some people, I think it brings out the best in a hell of a lot of people, including statists. So it's not even a matter of they're all going to suddenly believe in voluntarism. Most of them are still going to be statists. But if the cops aren't there, there's going to be varying degrees of people saying, well, we better figure out what to do about it. And I think that's already happening. And while I would love to see it more formalized and organized and thought out, like the ultimate example to me is what Dale Brown is doing with Threat Management Center. Like, if we had those all over the country, everybody would say, good riddance, cops. We never want to see you again, because this is 1,000 times better in every way and is actually pro-freedom and pro-protection. But I think even if there's none of that, even if people are sort of just dumped into this not knowing what to expect, a lot of people are going to adapt. And I think the way the power structure is going to try to spin this isn't going to work. Like right now, I think it's a very good thing to see so many millions of people coming to grips with the fact that cops just suck. They're just power-happy, sadistic bastards. They cover for each other. They lie all over the place. And so any attempt to spin it around to, well, this is why we need federal police, people aren't going to go, oh, a slightly different uniform? Now all of a sudden we love them again. This sort of emotional wave that's happening that I think is way beyond the control of those in power. They're trying to manipulate it and steer it and exploit it. But there's a genuine wave of resentment, which I've been talking about that for decades, of how this sort of thing builds up. And then one day it happens like an avalanche where, and revolutions happen almost overnight. And now with our technology, it can literally be overnight, where people put up with it. They don't like it, but they don't think there's anything to do about it. And then when the pressure cooker goes off, it goes off, and it goes off big time. And I think right now the control freaks are trying to manage that. It will be disorganized and ugly in a lot of ways, but I think this is going to hurt the control freaks more than it hurts the general public. And the more police departments get defunded and the more the whiny Nazis, we're going to go home if you don't worship us, and good riddance, get out. The more that happens, the quicker people will learn to grow up. And just throw in one more thing. Well, I've been babbling for half an hour. There's going to be a giant difference between people with the mentality of just ask authority, like people in big cities who are so used to just dialing 911 and otherwise not doing anything to act like a grown-up and protect their fellow man and stuff. They're going to take a lot longer to sort of get back to equilibrium, whereas the people off in the boonies who are heavily armed and like, we're not calling the cops, they're taking 3 hours to get here anyway, they're not going to notice a change. They're just going to go, oh, they quit? Oh, well, we never saw them anyway, and we never relied on them anyway, so who gives a crap? So there will be a very big difference from place to place. But I think overall, this is not good for the rulers, and it is good for freedom, even though it'll be a bumbling, uncoordinated, sort of ugly and somewhat scary transition as people learn to grow up.
Okay. I mostly agree with you, but I'm still going to try and devil's advocate this. So it's the big cities that are going to be the problem. It's going to be the people that have allowed themselves to become disarmed over the past 30 years. They have no means of self-defense. They're law-abiding taxpayers, and they're not getting the security service they're paying for. And by God, that's what they want. They don't want to have to protect themselves and risk their own life. They want to get what they're paying for. They want the police to do the job. They're sick of these Antifa idiots, trashing all this property and making life generally scary and uncomfortable. And why aren't the politicians doing their job? Let's elect somebody that will, come in and handle it. And if that wins, and the people that come in to handle it, there's no way they can handle it without extreme measures at this point. Like, I think you probably agree, at least with that. If the the government to be able to handle the current situation would have to be like militarized, like fascistic, just violence, and
it still wouldn't handle it. It would just cause a bigger backlash. Yeah, they'd have to try that to do it, and that wouldn't do it either, because that would just make more people pissed off than shooting at them. But go on, sorry.
No, I mean that was basically it. There's this hashtag that a friend of mine started, hashtag too prepared to care. Like he's got guns, he's got food, he's comfortable, he's protected, he's got a plan. And I'm sorry that you guys are uncomfortable, but, hashtag too prepared to care. And I thought that was hilarious. And it's kind of what you're talking about. The people that saw this coming, know how to defend themselves, have the means to do so. They probably don't even feel like they need to get involved with this stupidity. But it's the massive amounts of people that are mostly in big cities that are cucked. I hate that word. That are disarmed slaves in the city that are used to being defended and protected, quote unquote, defended and protected. That are going to bring about this fascism. What do you think?
But keep in mind, like, there are so many, and I've talked to a number of them. There are so many even liberal Democrats who are like total freaking hypocrites. In fact, pretty much all of them. But when it comes to gun ownership, they're like, I think only the police should blah, 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 but just in case I'm going to have this gun and not tell anybody about it. I mean, how many Democrat politicians got caught owning firearms and then being completely irresponsible with them? Because they're all hypocrites. They just don't want other people to have guns. It's not really that they don't want to have guns. And so there's already an opportunity. I assume it's already happening. If it's not, it's going to be happening very quickly, of a massive new market in running illegal guns into cities and selling them at a huge markup. And so there'll probably be like truckloads coming in from out in the country where everybody has 3 guns anyway. It's like, well, I'll sell 1 or 2 of mine, still be armed and make a killing. Because, and this is the thing that even so many pro-freedom people miss. It's easy to point out people going, like, they're going along with it, and they're paying their taxes, and they're abiding by all these stupid rules, and they're doing that over and over again. But when suddenly it's their life on the line, which we just saw with the stupid COVID-19 thing, even a bunch of state-worshipping, even total leftists are just like, yeah, no, I'm just going to disobey now because I need food to feed my family. Like, they're not going to sit there and starve to death to obey. They will obey if they can obey and still have their comfortable life. But if there are like scary people in the street, they're not going to go, well, I'm certainly not going to violate the firearms laws. They're going to go, screw that. My life depends on it. Where's a freaking gun? And it's not about, a principle or them understanding a philosophy or anything. It's just about the fact that when people get desperate enough, they do what they have to survive. And whether that's just buying a gun or neighbors getting together and saying, now that the cops are like on strike or gone or something, can I like call you if there's trouble and you can call me? And do we know people with guns and stuff? Like, they'll do that because they think their lives depend on it. Like I said, just like when there's a flood and people are suddenly like, all right, now it's literally life and death. We got to get our shit together and start acting like grown-ups. And people can do that in a heartbeat when they have to. So it's more that people don't want to have to do that. But if they have to, they do, because the other choice is get robbed or murdered or something. So they're not going to be happy about it. But I think a bunch of people, even though they'll still be statists, are going to suddenly grow up and realize, all right, we got to work together. And that was already happening in the protests / riots / whatever's going on. And of course, the media version of what's going on is never anywhere near the whole story. But there were normal people with guns going up and saying, yeah, we're going to protect the stores from being smashed. You can stand over there and tell the cops they suck, because they do. We're going to stay over here and make sure you don't like rob people. And that was happening in a bunch of places. I would also point out that, the media loves to show the Antifa thing and burning and chaos and mayhem. That's happening to about 0% of businesses in the country. But the news doesn't go, here's a business where nothing's happening, because that's kind of boring. But like, the percentage of businesses that are actually affected by this is really tiny. I mean, it's not okay. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but for the vast majority of people, they're not having Antifa riots in their front yard. It's like a thing they see on the news, and then they go out in their neighborhood and go, all right, is there anything to worry about here? And maybe we should get a gun or like plan ahead or something. But it isn't the alarmist mayhem that's on the media. And so the ability of the vast majority to sort of take care of themselves and each other is pretty much a heartbeat away, especially given the fact that there are 100 million or so gun owners and they own about 300 million guns. So if every gun owner goes, here you go, you can borrow one. Now there's 300 million gun owners. So we got
now there's 300 million gun owners with 2 guns.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's
there's
and I know people are stupid, but I actually have faith that when forced to grow up, a lot of people grow up.
there's this thing happening that the right, the Republican types didn't expect and didn't realize, that I think we did, that even a small number of people standing against the police can completely overpower the police, can make the police scared to even show up to work, basically. And we're seeing that at things like that statue that they were trying to pull over. The cops didn't even show up. They didn't even show up to the protest because, you know, they don't want to, they're scared, they got other things going on, like, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And so what happened is, I think this is a teaching moment for the Republicans. They're like, where are the police? These people, this riotous mob is going to destroy property. It's the cops' job. We pay our taxes. Why aren't the cops stepping in to, you know, protect this property or whatever? Realize that they don't, stand up and do it themselves, which is what you're talking about. Like, people are not just going to stand by while riots and crap happen near their house and destroy businesses and people's stuff, even public property, whatever. But they're people just are not going to let that happen near their house. There are millions of people in Texas that would actually probably secretly like it if Antifa tried to riot here for reasons. But yeah, no, it's like, so what you're saying I think is true, and it's backed up by evidence. The people are standing up to do it themselves when they realize that the cops aren't doing it, but I don't think enough of them are realizing that teaching moment, that the cops can't protect you. It's like TSA, it's security theater. They just make you feel safe. They don't actually do shit but annoy you and make your life harder, and actually they're just part of the problem. They're not part of the solution. And so let's talk next maybe about what we think, what should we be doing right now? We have these moments happening around us. We have, you know, the ball is rolling down the hill. Where do we think it's going to go? And what should our sort of role in it be? What should we be doing?
Well, the underlying thing that matters didn't even change, which is how many people give up the superstition of authority. Because it would be like, I wouldn't mind being somewhere where there's a bunch of like constitutionalists or gun-owning conservatives or whatever who at least take care of each other and defend each other and blah, blah, blah. They're still going to want a ruling class. They'd still, you know, create a new one. And there's going to be sort of this inconsistent, unprincipled mess, but at least they'll sort of, you know, defend against aggressors. But what totally makes this fall over permanently is enough people understanding that this isn't just what's some stopgap measure until the cops come back and save us. It's how do we grow up and just deal with it and be rid of those bastards forever. And like you said, it takes such a wimpy amount of resistance to make the cops literally run away. I mean, you look at Antifa, most of them are probably infiltrators, but let's pretend they're genuine. They're, you know, rock throwing twits. Have any of them shown up with guns even? And so, like, that amount of resistance of just kind of loud, obnoxious brats. And I'm not saying everybody in the protests was that. Tons of people were protesting for perfectly good reasons and weren't just randomly ruining people's property. But the actual, you know, vandals and dumbasses, they're this wimpy threat. If cops with their M16s run away from some kids with bottles, imagine what they do to people who actually wanted freedom and had their guns and said, yeah, go away. The cops would just run away. And so I think in addition to cops being like defunded and whining and running away and intentionally just avoiding areas, I think more and more they will get scared to even go to areas where the people have grown up and protect themselves. Because those people might also say, yeah, by the way, we don't want you in here, cops. We know you're just thugs. You just piss off. We'll do this. We got it handled. You go harass somebody else who doesn't have guns. Because the whole thing of growing up, and you know, that analogy applies in so many ways. The whole thing of growing up is you want to be a kid because it's so easy and somebody else is taking care of everything. Then you get to the point and realize they can't take care of everything. I have to take care of myself. And then suddenly you go, but I get to be free. I get to be in charge of my own life and not have somebody bossing me around and controlling me. So when people step into the role of being a grown-up and say, all right, we have to protect each other, and, in whatever way we do that, and help each other, help the poor, and help, when one of us is sick, we have to act like grown-ups. And when that happens, they also realize, why did we ever need those guys? Like money and got in our way and occasionally beat us up. Let's just not have them. So the last thing, it's like a possessive, creepy parent who trains their child to always be dependent, to never grow up and never know how to do anything on their own. It's a trap, and it's a trap that's veiled as kindness, and that's what politics always is we're going to keep you dependent on us and scared, because if you ever figure out you don't need us, well, there goes all our power, because all you have to do is say, yeah, piss off, we'll handle it ourselves, we don't need you anymore, stay away. That's the end of politics. And so I think forcing people into that is one of the best things that can happen. And one of the side effects of that is more and more people will become voluntarists almost accidentally, because there are so many people who already think the cops suck and the government's corrupt and they suck at everything they do. Blah, blah, blah. Isn't that big a thing, your own lighting your own family and providing for them? Like, it's a lot easier step to go to like, well, we don't need them at all, than somebody who's getting a government paycheck and food stamps and then lives in government housing, and like, you depend entirely on them. It's hard to say, heck with you, go away. But when you're most of the way independent anyway, it's pretty dang easy. And this is forcing more people to be more independent, which will make it easy for them to say, why do we need you at all? Just go away. We're not paying your taxes. We don't care what you want. Stay out of our neighborhood.
Yeah, I watch Glenn Beck still because he's a good barometer for what the right is thinking from an emotional standpoint, and he's very troubled right now, let me tell you. So one of the things he mentioned, I think, was what you're talking about. He called it the Bubba effect. He said that he talked to a federal law enforcer candidly, and this law enforcer told him that what the government is really afraid of is what they call the Bubba effect. And apparently there was some report on it. And what the Bubba effect is when the people in an area become so distrustful of law enforcement, federal or local or whatever, that when a crime happens, they tell the law enforcement to stay away. We'll handle it ourselves. And that's what they call the Bubba effect. And that is what they are most scared of. When the people in an area don't want their help anymore, that's when it's over. And I think that's where we're going pretty quick, right?
Yeah. And keep in mind that, I think at the top there really are people who, with a lot of money who pay other people to figure out the propaganda and the psychology, and they do all sorts of devious, nasty crap. But the underling cops, they're just bozo order obeyers. They're not like in on some overall plan to do it all. So they don't realize that by going, hey, we need to go home, they're kicking themselves in the butt. Because the more they stay out of the way and people go, oh, the world didn't come to an end, the more people are going to go, just don't come back. You can just whine at your house about how unfair it was for us to point out that you're a bunch of sadistic wimps. And you can just stay over there and we'll handle things ourselves. And I suspect the people at the top are like, oh, don't quit and run away. They're going to figure out they don't need us. Make them remember why they need us. The line from V for Vendetta. The stupid cops are helping people remember why we don't freaking need them. And they're being these pouty imbeciles that are actually helping put themselves out of business by refusing to show up, and then people grow up and handle it themselves, and then they're like, just don't bother, we're done with you. And that's already happening, and I think it's going to happen in a lot of places that it never did before, because people realize, well, we have to do it. And I've heard a bunch of statists saying that about like the shutdowns. It's like, I have to provide for my family. I don't care what the governor says. Doesn't matter anymore because my family's on the line. So heck with you. And it's like, if we have to protect ourselves, we'll do that. And heck with what government says or the cops say or whatever. You just stay away.
And when the government enforces the laws against those peaceful people that are breaking the law to protect themselves, that will be like the knife in the existing wound. People will really realize really quickly that the government is not only, they just released like 50 rioters in Fort Worth, like 30 minutes from my house. They arrested them rioting, destroying property, breaking the law, and they just dropped the charges and released them. And then they also are going after people breaking the mask laws in their business establishment. And the 6 foot, we have this law in restaurants right now where tables with people at them can't be closer than 6 feet apart. So all the restaurants are basically operating at half capacity. And you better believe they're looking to enforce that one. Oh no, but we're going to let the rioters go. We're going to let those guys go, and we're going to focus on these peaceful people just trying to eat dinner. Like,
yeah.
So is that what we do? Is that what we do right now? Is that our job? Because like you said, there's not enough altruists yet such that like statism is going away, that none of that's changing. People's belief in the authority of the government isn't changing. So should we just be standing on the sidelines right now and pointing out all these contradictions and all these teaching moments and being like, look, your government, that's security theater. Look, your government isn't actually protecting you. Look, do it for yourself. Fuck, like what should we be doing?
Yeah, a lot of my focus hasn't changed at all. To me, this is just a huge opportunity because tons of people who've never thought about these things, and I'm hearing this from a lot of voluntarists who suddenly say, now a bunch of my statist friends are suddenly talking to me and listening to what I have to say because they're like, hey, since when does the governor get to tell us when we can leave our own houses? Like, yeah, thanks for finally paying attention now that it got this ridiculous. But and I said this at the beginning, and I was a little bit cautious. I use the analogy of if you're playing chess against somebody and you don't know how good they are, and they do a move that looks really stupid, you have to pause and go, okay, maybe there's some trap that I'm not seeing. I have to look carefully. That looked idiotic, but let me check. And I said from the beginning of the shutdowns and everything, this was the stupidest thing I've ever seen tyrants do because it literally forced people to learn how to disobey them. And millions of people did exactly that, including devout statists. And like I won't get into the huge psychology side of it, but like the Milgram experiment showed, the moment someone sees an example of somebody else saying, I'm going to disobey that because it's stupid, almost everybody else is going to go, yeah, me too, heck with that. And I've talked to people, like I make it a psychology experiment just when I'm out in public. I'll drop some snide comment about these stupid masks or whatever. And, well, in Arizona, you're not required to do that. But I'll take every chance to point out these shutdowns are idiotic and are way more destructive. And most people are like, yeah, I know. We have to we have to earn a living and blah, 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 blah. So the government made millions and millions of enemies. And yet there are still pro-freedom people who think, no, they have all this under control. This is all their clever plan. This is a stupid plan. Like they're trying to spin it and they're trying to exploit it, but this is already backfiring in their face so bad. And then their response to the protests and stuff, and then the police brutality, and then they respond by being more brutal, which is really genius because that wins people over. Is just an added level of stupidity. And like if they're doing that on purpose, then they become utter imbeciles. And I've been saying for decades, I think the quality of our tyrants has been going downhill for many decades. My first book was How to Be a Successful Tyrant. They used to be way better at the propaganda and the mind control. They got lazy. They suck now. You look at how many people... the best news I've seen in the longest time. I couldn't freaking believe it. Until now, my favorite was when they did a poll and more than 50% said, if you can cheat on your taxes and not give the IRS money, that's perfectly moral. And I said, that is massive. That is monumental. When you get that many people coming right out and saying, we don't feel any obligation to give them our money, we're just scared, so we do. That is huge. And the people who did the poll said that is a massive change just from 10 years earlier. Well, the one that just came out, I think it was Newsweek, did a poll, and they did an interview about, hey, in Minneapolis, where they took over the police station and lit it on fire. Do you partially approve of that, or all the way approve, or totally disapprove? The partially approve and all the way approve added up to 54%. Barging into a police station and lighting it on fire. if you're somebody in a position of power and you see more than half of your underlings going, yeah, I can see why they did that, you're in deep doo-doo because your mental control over the people is falling apart. And they can spin it and they can try to hijack it and infiltrate and try to trigger violent reactions and all this stuff. But they know they're in deep doo-doo because there's so many people who now that everyone around them dares to say the cops suck and are evil bastards, now everyone, I mean, even Hollywood's doing it now. Like, oh, we're so concerned about police violence now that it's fashionable to be concerned about police violence. Mm-hmm. Like, some of us have been saying that for a quarter of a century, and now you're paying attention because there's no risk in saying it because everybody's saying it.
Yep.
It's like the evolution of, there were the abolitionists, those crazy extremists saying, we think slavery is really bad and it should end. Oh, shut up. And then eventually everybody says it because now there's no risk because everybody knows it. We're heading in that direction with authoritarianism, where it used to be this little fringe group saying, this is evil, those are the bad guys, the cops are not their friend, they're not serving you, shut up. And now everybody is societally allowed to say that cops are violent bastards.
Yeah.
And good. And that's not going to back up. That's not going back the other way.
Well, and there's so many teaching moments. Like, I could literally just post on social media and make videos all day, and I need to do that more. But it's like the left, hey, you have a contradiction. You want to defund the police, but guess who gets the taxes to pay for all your welfare that you want? Oh, like without the police, how are you going to enforce that? There's just, it's like Candyland right now. So that's what we do. We continue being loud about the principles behind things. We call out things when we see it happening loudly so other people can see somebody standing up to it and speaking the truth to power. Like, in small ways and large ways. I just, this is a black market haircut that you're looking at right now because I went legitimately, like a legitimately black market. We broke the regulations, to get it done because I had 2 appointments with 2 salons, and I walk in and they're like, hey, you need to wear a mask. Do you have your own mask? I'm like, no, I don't have my own mask. I'm happy to break that rule if you are, and I'm in front of all the people in the building. And so I go and I sit down, and the stylist comes up and she's like, oh, you're a no masker? That's what she called me. You're a no masker? And I'm like, yeah, I just, I don't really, I don't really feel the need to wear the mask. I'm happy to, and I said it just like this, like, I'm happy to break that rule if you are, it's your business, so you can obviously make the rules for what you want, but I'm not really interested in that. And she's like, oh no, I have a problem with that. And so I just politely, in front of the people, said, okay, thank you, have a nice day, stood up and walked out. Like, it's the little things like that. And listen, folks, like, out of everybody in the world that has a reason to wear a mask, my family's at the top of the list with my daughter's medical situation. And so I have been very, like, every 2 weeks, I have a meeting with the head of my daughter's oncology treatment to discuss the current medical situation of this Larona thing around the country. And just to let you guys know, we are now going back. Weeks ago, we went back to how we were behaving before the entire thing started. So just to kind of let you know what my analysis of the situation is around this thing, like, the people that have the most reason to be wearing a mask right now are fucking over it. So I'm a little surprised the rest of the world isn't already there, because this is dumb. Anyway, so yeah, be loud about it, stand up politely, make your points, let people see somebody resisting, and you might get some people following along, right?
Yeah, and it's so, like I was saying about how crappy the tyrants are these days, in a good way. I mean, they're just incompetent. Like, you have to be a successful long-term tyrant, you have to have most of your subjects thinking that they benefit from you having power. Who thinks that anymore? Like, a lot of people are still, they're like, well, we need government to do this and this and this, even though they're really bad at this and this and this, and mostly they do the things we don't want them to. Like, they still want this ideal thing, but they acknowledge that this isn't nearly it. Like, what we have now is just horrendous. Like, that's their best allies. In most cases, people say, we definitely need it to do what it never does a good job of, but we need it for that. But mostly it does things we don't want. And so if that's the mentality of your subjects, where it was only a few decades ago where nationalism And if you came out and said, I think people should break the law if they disagree with it morally, most of the country, wow, that's horrible. I mean, the level of just devout fundamentalist authoritarianism, I don't know what else to call it, that was in this country like around the time of World War II was just amazing. The control they had over people's minds, and the slide from then until now is massive. And the thing is, there's so many anarchists now who've been anarchists for like 5 minutes. And they're like, oh, this is frustrating and nobody's paying attention. And they don't have the perspective of, I wasn't around in the 40s and 50s, but they don't have the perspective of just a few decades ago. Like, I wrote an article called When Should You Shoot a Cop? And then it turned into a video called When Should You Shoot a Cop? And people were like, oh my gosh, how can you even say such a thing? That was like 15 years ago or something. I forget exactly. And now it's like the public discussion. And in a time scale that's nothing. Like, things don't move this fast until now because of the communication technology we have. It used to just take forever for public opinion to actually shift. Like, if you asked people, do you support the police, just as a general question, a year ago, I guarantee there would be a massive measurable difference from you asking them now. And a lot of people go, I don't know, they're kind of power happy buttheads. Like, from a year ago, I don't know what the before and after would be, but I guarantee there'd be a huge difference in between because they're doing that bad a job of convincing us that they're there for our benefit. I mean, they sort of dropped that facade when they were doing like $1 trillion bailouts. We're going to rob you and give it to the richest people in the world. Like, it's hard to pretend that you're there for the common man after you do that right in front of them a few times. And so and the mistake that tyrants always make is they sort of forget how important it is to control people's minds. And they're like, well, we're big and tough. We can just control them by force. No, you can't. Because when they all figure out that, hey, none of us feel obligated to obey these twerps or pay their taxes, it's done. Brute force cannot control that many people, especially that many people with guns, if their feeling of obligation to obey is gone. And that is falling apart all over the place, especially right now, both with the stupid COVID-19 thing and then with the police brutality and protests and stuff. And so this is the best opportunity I've seen in my lifetime to have people open to the ideas of self-ownership and non-aggression. And there's the challenge that when people are emotional and mad, they're usually not thinking very clearly. But if they pause between, screaming at the cops, you can say, okay, can you want to we'll take a tea break from screaming at the cops and let's have an actual discussion so you can philosophically understand why the cops are enemies instead of just, hey, we saw them do something nasty on video. It's like, yeah, but there's a reason they are, by their very nature, enemies of humanity. But so many people are now open to that who weren't like a few months ago. And the government's making that happen. And I don't think it's a clever ploy. It's just an imbecilic catastrophe that they brought on themselves.
So the blue flu, as they're calling it, where the cops are going to start calling in sick, so to speak, we should not be wearing our masks, to continue the analogy. We need to be vocal about it and use these moments to teach people and to spread the ideas of voluntarism, because when everybody's comfortable, no one is interested in really upending their entire worldview and learning anything new. But when they're uncomfortable, like now, well, now's your chance, guys. Now's the moment where you need to be out there talking to people and getting in and showing them. The last thing I'd like to talk with you about is, just because there hasn't been a lot of content created around what's happening in CHAZ, Seattle. Thank you. I want to get your thoughts, and let me give mine really quickly, and then I'd love to get your thoughts. So we have, I bet it's like 80% just normies that are like Black Lives Matter sort of protest rioters that kind of moved in and took it over. I don't think that was like principled anarcho-communists in there, principled anarcho-communists going in there and instituting communist utopia. But I definitely think to a certain degree it's been co-opted by those ideas for sure. I think a lot of it is peaceful, but there's also a lot of video of bad things happening, you know, property getting destroyed and defaced and businesses being shut down. Some businesses have been allowed to operate, others are destroyed and forced closed. You know, people are getting assaulted and bad things are happening. So it's not, like I said this on Facebook yesterday, it's not something that I can get behind. It's not something I can endorse as like anarchy, hashtag like freedom. Yeah. I think what's happening there is good for a very short list of certain specific lessons that we can use to teach the public. But in general, probably a bad thing on balance. What do you think?
I think the good that's going to come out of it has nothing to do with the actual people there and what's actually happening. Like, I've only paid a little bit of attention to it, knowing full well that the media is going to slant it and spin it. And like, you're not going to get the real story of what's going on from the media anyway. But I've seen bits and pieces here and there. But I think when people are stuck in anarchy, in a state where they don't know what's going on and they don't know what the rules are and they don't know who's in charge, oddly enough, I think that's a good thing, because then their brain is sort of in equilibrium where they have to decide, well, what are we going to do and how are we going to deal with this? And it's uncomfortable for them because suddenly they're responsible. It's not just, well, dial 911. Oh, the cops aren't there and they're not going to come. But being forced to think like a grown-up gives people practice for not being statists. But I think this, you know, the little thing happening there, and I saw a few stories which are sort of funny, making fun of it being communism, because like where they're like, no, we're in charge, we the people are blah, 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 and we're out of food. Can somebody bring us food? And people making memes like, way to be starving in 2 days. It's like a new record for communism, is being out of food in 2 frickin' days.
There's been a massive influx of Domino's pizza delivery guys, was a story that I read. Like, basically Domino's is feeding the entire populace there or something like that. It's hilarious. That's not capitalism. Yeah.
Capitalism, woohoo! And so the thing is, whatever's actually happening there, I hope it, like whether it's brats or infiltrators and instigators and whatever else, I hope this period of sort of lack of authoritarian control lets the normal people there sort of build a network of, all right, we live here and we work here and let's figure out what to do while this sort of unpredictable weirdness is going on. Again, throwing them into the role of a grown-up where they kind of have to deal with it. And I think that's a good thing. And I think there's also, it's weird because I sort of look at the big picture and the overall game. So often something that's very bad for the individuals who are in it right now ends up being a good thing overall. It's not, I would never push that. Like, yeah, let's torture some individuals for the common good. But it's still worth recognizing that some good things can come out of situations that are really crappy for the people who are in them at the moment. And I think that, a lot of people are learning the hard way that when you really need cops, they're not going to friggin' be there anyway. And I think a lot of people already knew that. Like, if there's somebody breaking into your house, calling the cops is A, more likely to get you shot than saved, and B, it's going to be over by the time they show up anyway. And the only time cops will be reliable is they will reliably pull you over for not having the right sticker and steal some money from you. So the absence of the badge-wearing fascists, people are going to notice, not a whole lot changed except they're robbing fewer of us, because that's mostly what they did anyway. And people will notice that. It's like, okay, well, if I called them before, they took too long to show up, and if I call them now, they don't show up at all, and there's not really a difference there, only they're not constantly pulling people over and ticketing people and harassing people for this and that and the other thing. And so I think this instability forces people to have to think. It forces people to have to figure things out for themselves, which I wouldn't want to foist on them intentionally, but it may have a good outcome of having people figure these things out, including figuring out that communism is idiotic. Because if people go, rah, 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 but not for those guys, like, yeah, we don't like the police abuse, but then these idiots are getting in our way and thing of them charging a fee to do business there, and the police twit saying, this is extortion. It's like, that's what you literally do everywhere you go. And but I think more people are going to start noticing that stuff. It's like, yeah, we don't have to pay some bunch of weird brats to do business in our own neighborhood. Screw you. And so these things tend to settle themselves out. And often a state of instability is what brings out people actually thinking and daring to act, because they kind of have to. You can't just ignore it when it's, it's in your front yard. Then you have to do something about it. And then the grown-ups figure out what to do about it. And I think that's actually a very good, a very situation that can turn into a very good thing. Because again, the more people act like grown-ups, the more they realize, yeah, cops, you don't need to come back. Politicians, you don't need to come back. You just stay over there. We figured out how to do it ourselves. We're fine. Bye.
Yeah, somebody needs to be out there. Somebody needs to be out there saying loudly, "Hey, the total number of speeding tickets issued in the CHAZ area, 0. The total number of stop sign violations, 0. Like all these stupid victimless crimes has been reduced to 0. The police violence over victimless crimes is 0 in that area. That is a big plus that people need to be realizing and pointing out. Yeah.
Yeah. Go make a video about that.
That's a good idea. Wait, should I? Wait, that's my job. Okay. All right. Well, did you
take responsibility?
Grow up? Okay. Yeah. All right, guys. That's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Is there anything else you wanted to mention?
I think that's about it. I mean, I could babble for hours, but that encapsulates the general theme of that.
All good thoughts all around. So the takeaways are basically, be prepared, take care of your own business, grow up, and then use all these teaching moments around you to wake people up, because the fruit is ripening right now. So get out there and do it. Be an example to others of how to stand up for yourself and for what's right, and be loud about it when you can. Cool. All right. Well,
and just to throw in one more thing, the day-to-day news and whatever's going on in this place, that's not forever. That's a temporary thing. What matters in the long run is how many people have the mindset of freedom and self-ownership and stuff. And these are actually useful incidents that they're very temporary. They'll be forgotten about in a few years, but the change in people's hearts can be permanent. And that's what we have to focus on.
Yep. All right. Good stuff. Great advice. Guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for participating in the comments. And thanks for hanging out, Larken. We should do this more often. This is fun.
Thank you. It was awesome.
Have a good one, guys. Take it easy.